Nevada's coming out with a new down payment assistance program for essential workers. It's going to come out December 1st, and it's going to give up to $20,000 towards down payment, closing costs, and potential rate buy down, which I'll explain what that means in a minute. But there's only going to be 900 spots available. Once it becomes live December 1st, a lot of home buyers are already going to be pre-approved for their home loan, and they're going to be securing their funds. And once the funds are used up, this program is just done. So they come out with these niche type of programs every so often. There's like year-round down payment assistance programs that are available, and there's pros and cons to those. But then every so often they'll come out with these type of programs where they provide substantially more. And so like this one, for example, is available to essential workers. I'll break down those categories. But they have come out with other programs in the past that are available for like certain zip codes when they're trying to promote home ownership in certain areas, stuff like that. So they pretty much always have limited funds for these kind of niche programs, and they always get used up like quicker than you would think. So this program is going to be offered by Nevada Housing Division. So you still go through a regular lender like myself. I work with All Western Mortgage. I've been doing home loans for over 14 years. So you would still get pre-approved with a lender that is associated with Nevada Housing Division and is qualified on the qualified list of lenders that offer this program. But the entity that offers the funds, it's through an entity called Nevada Housing Division. And so they've put together a list of 4 categories and then many professions within those categories of workers who qualify. And those categories are basically broke down into public safety, healthcare, education, and construction workers. So there's a list of many different professions within those 4 categories. So we can provide that list to you, or a lender can provide that list to you. And if you work within one of those categories, but your specific profession is not on that list for whatever reason, you may still qualify for this program. Basically, what the lender would need to do is get details on your profession. And we would probably submit it to that Nevada Housing Division and say, hey, this employee is clearly within one of these 4 categories, but their profession is not on this list. Will they still qualify? And as long as it makes sense from what we've been told, you will be able to use the program still. So there are a few other requirements that you have to meet. So you have to be full-time in your position. So this wouldn't work if you're like a part-time nurse or something like that. You have to be considered full-time. Now, full-time is usually 40 hours a week, but I know there are like full-time nurses that I've helped that work like 312s, 36 hours a week. And I'm sure in those scenarios, like the definition of full-time can be somewhat loose. Like if a full-time employee in that profession works 36 hours and it's always, set, I imagine that's going to be fine. But you do have to be full-time. It can't be like on call or anything like that. You have to be a Nevada resident for at least 6 months. Now, the way they're going to verify that is through a Nevada ID. So we'll get a copy of your Nevada ID. It will show the issue date and your address, and that will show proof of how long you've lived at that address. Now, there might be certain scenarios where maybe you moved from California to Nevada like a year ago, but you never took the step to get a new ID. There will be exceptions to that too. I think we just really have to use common sense in that scenario. Like maybe we could show other proof, like proof of utility bills from months back, and a letter of explanation from you confirming why you don't have a Nevada ID, stuff like that. But generally speaking, we check the proof of that 6-month residency through your ID. Now, this is going to be for a purchase of your primary residence only, meaning they're only going to give you these funds if you plan on living in the home. So they're not giving you money to start your own like investment home portfolio and earn like an income producing rental property or something like that. You have to live in the home. There is an income limit for this program, so you can't earn more than 150% of the area median income. Now that's pretty generous compared to a lot of other programs that exist that have income limits. So I wouldn't worry too much about that limit, and it varies depending on the county within Nevada. But really, the way that income is calculated is specific to loan guidelines anyway. So you might think that you might be over or under, but based on the way it's calculated, according to those loan procedures, it might be within or not. But the best way to determine that is just get with a lender. And then, of course, these aren't the only requirements. So these programs are offered through standard loan programs, mainly like what you might have heard of them. They're called conventional FHA, USDA, and VA. Those are the main 4 programs that 99% of home buyers use. And so we still have to treat that like those loans. They technically are those loans still. We're just getting this assistance on top of that loan. And so you have to qualify, per those loan guidelines, which the loan officer would confirm when they do your pre-approval. Okay, so the other thing is they're not just necessarily giving you the $20,000. It's not just like a gift. It is provided as assistance through what's called a 0% silent second loan. So it's a second loan that goes as a lien against the home, in addition to your first mortgage, like that you would use, when you buy the home. So when you buy a home, if you didn't use any assistance and you were trying to put the minimum down, if you were not using this program and you went with, like, let's say conventional loan, for example, as a first time home buyer, you would have to put as little as 3% down. So, basically meaning your first loan mortgage, in that case, your only mortgage would be 97% of the price of the home. And then your 3% acts as the down. So obviously this assistance is going to cover that part for you. Then that $20,000 that's used towards covering that 3% down plus whatever your closing costs would be. And it might work out to where maybe because you have the full 20, maybe you're putting a little bit more than the 3% down or whatever. But it would work out whatever that assistance is being used to apply towards the down payment required for the first loan on the closing costs. That is a second lien against the home. Now there's 0% interest rate. So you're not paying interest on that loan. If you were, that would be, that would probably not be a good idea depending on the rate. And then there's no monthly payments on it, but it is not forgivable for 30 years. So meaning you have to, if you refinance or sell the home, you have to pay that off. Now that's not going to be appealing for everyone. Like if you have a bunch of money in the bank and you can cover your down payment and closing costs, maybe the lender or someone like me runs the numbers for you and decides, or gives advice, and you decide together with that lender, like, hey, maybe this isn't the best option for you. You might be better off just coming up with your own funds so you don't have that second lien against the home. But if you don't have the funds otherwise, this is a really great option because it'll get you in the home and you'll have that lien against the home. But homes typically appreciate about 4% a year, meaning the value goes up by about 4% a year. So if you stay on track, if the market stays on track with that, which it pretty much always does long term, your equity that you gain in the home is at some point going to outpace, or is going to be more than that $20,000 lien that you had against the home. So, that is one of the cons of the program, but it's not going to stop a lot of people. It's important that the lender does break that down for you and help you understand that this is going to be, it's not just money that's being given to you. It's money that's they're letting you borrow to get in the home and cover the down payment and closing costs for your purchase. Now, when you buy a home, you have a down payment. So like I explained in that example, so a conventional loan and FHA, those are going to be two common ones. So a conventional loan would require you to put as little as 3% down if you're a first-time buyer, 5% down if you're not. An FHA loan is a loan that's available for, like, it's very similar to a conventional, but there's pros and cons to each. Typically, if you have a little bit of blemished credit, the FHA is going to be more likely the option for you opposed to conventional, but FHA will allow you to put as little as 3.5% down. So we would, the lender would still look at your whole scenario and determine what options are available, and make most sense for you. But so basically when you buy a home, you have that down payment, 3.5%, 5%, whatever it ends up being the minimum, for a primary residence, which that's the only thing that you can use this program for. So you'd have that down payment. You'd also have like standard closing costs. So whenever you buy a home, there's typical costs that a buyer would typically pay. So those are things like lender fees, title and escrow fees, appraisal fee, first year of homeowner's insurance paid up front, prepaid property taxes, funds tucked away to cover future taxes and insurance after you close, HOA setup fees, home warranty, all that combined. That's breaking that down to something for another video, but all that combined here in like Las Vegas on a primary residence, probably common that it's somewhere between 2 and 3% of the purchase price. So that's a dollar amount that is owed in addition to your down payment. And then so the grant, down payment assistance program can be used to cover those two things. And then also if there's funds left over, it can be used to cover what are called discount points. Now, discount points are fees that you would pay in order to get a lower rate than what you would otherwise have got. So it's just basically you're buying a lower payment up front. So depending on what the total amount is for your down payment and closing costs, and then you could look at paying discount points, we could see how that $20,000 can be used. It's kind of complex, so it's really just worth determining, in your an individual scenario, a good lender is going to break that all down for you. But so like most down payment assistance programs, like through the Nevada Housing Division, a lot of other ones, they do not give you the option to buy the rate down. So basically, you have like one rate that's available for conventional, one rate that's available for FHA, and you either take it or leave it. This program will allow you to buy the rate down. So I'll pull up on the screen here an example of what the Nevada Housing Division sent out to us lenders. Now, this is just an example of what would have been available on November 12th, 2025, but this program wasn't even available yet, and rates change daily, right? But I want to show you here what these, kind of make sense of what this stuff looks like. So the first three options are FHA, VA, USDA. VA is if you're previous or active military. Honestly, if you qualify for a VA loan, I'd probably run the numbers without using this down payment assistance. You might be better off because the VA loan is so awesome, allows you to put no money down. You might be better off just not using that so you don't have that lien against your home, but you technically could use it for a VA loan. And then USDA is more for rural areas, like in Las Vegas is not going to really qualify, but there's certain parts near Vegas like Boulder City, and then like Northern Nevada, there's a lot of places that will qualify for USDA loan, but mainly those are not going to be used. It's mainly going to be FHA or conventional. So let's start with the bottom conventional rate option here, which would be 6.75%. So if you did not pay any fees, or if you did not use any of these funds rather to get a lower rate, the standard rate would be 6.75. Now let's look at if we bought a $400,000 house. And let's say you're a first-time buyer, so you can put 3% down. Well, 3% down would be about $12,000 down. So right off the bat, $12,000 of the $20,000 gets used up for the down payment. So you'd have about $8,000 left over. Now, like I mentioned, you have standard closing costs. And so let's just say they're roughly 2.5% of the purchase price of the home. And that's just an estimate based on what I think all the combined costs that a buyer would pay would be. But if it was 2.5% of the loan, that'd be about $10,000, right? So your down payment is 12 and your closing costs are 10. So the total out-of-pocket funds for this purchase would be about $22,000, right? So in that case, you may have to basically, the 20 would cover the first 20 of the 22, and maybe you have to come out of pocket with $2,000. So that's one way it could play out. One thing to point out though, is you might be able to get what's called a seller credit, which in this market, I'm filming this video in November of 2025, at least here in Vegas and other parts of Nevada, it's not uncommon that you can get what's called a seller credit, to where the seller can pay your closing costs. So let's say in that same scenario, you're buying a $400,000 home with 3% down, would be $12,000, and that wipes out the down payment. So you have $8,000 of that credit left over. Now, let's say you got a seller credit. Basically, a seller credit means that you say in your contract, hey, I'll pay $400,000 for this house, but only if you give me a credit of $10,000 to cover my standard closing costs. So if the standard closing costs were $10,000, basically the seller would wipe out your closing costs, generally speaking, right? So, but now you have $8,000 left over to use to buy the rate down. So in this conventional loan program, you could buy the rate down with 2 discount points, which is 2% of the loan amount. In this case, your loan is $388,000 because you're buying a $400,000 home with $12,000 down. The leftover amount is your loan amount, which would be $388,000. So $388,000 times 2% would be $7,760. So just let's round it to 8,000, right? So in that case, basically, if you got a credit from the seller to cover your closing costs of roughly $10,000, the down payment assistance program in that case would cover your $12,000 down plus the $7,760 to buy the rate down to get this 5.875% rate. And then the total for those two things, your down payment and buying the rate down, would be about $19,760, which is pretty much using up that whole $20,000. And then the seller comes out of pocket, covers your closing costs. So in that case, you could come out of pocket with very, very little. In some cases, you have to do an inspection and appraisal. You have to pay for what's called an earnest money deposit, which in this scenario that I just explained, you might just get that refunded back to you. But in that case, you could get a rate of about, in this example, if it was 5.875, which is pretty competitive in this current market, and basically the grant foots the bill for the down payment and the buy down, and then the seller foots the bill for the closing costs. Now, maybe you make an offer on the $400,000 home and you say, hey, give me a $10,000 credit towards my closing costs. And the seller says, I'm not giving you a penny. Like, I'll give you zero. I got another buyer that's willing to go under contract to buy my house, and they're not asking for anything. So that might be the case, but it's not uncommon in this market where you can get those credits from the seller. So it's definitely plausible. Or maybe they say, we'll give you 5,000, in which case, basically you come out of pocket with 5,000, but you're still getting a rate of 5.875. And all it cost you if the whole transaction was 5,000. So that could be a very plausible scenario. Okay, so one thing I will drive home here is like who you choose as your lender really matters. I would love you to choose me. It doesn't have to be me, right? But I've been doing home loans for 14 years, and one thing that a lot of lenders really screw up is they don't get your pre-approval correctly. And on this grant program, it's a lot easier for a lender to mess up because there's a computer program that all lenders typically have to run the file through to make sure it will be approved. And a lot of lenders skip that step. And even a file that looks like it would qualify sometimes will not when you plug in these programs into the system. A lot of the times they will, but sometimes lenders drop the ball on that and they don't do your pre-approval correctly. So you really want to choose a good lender on this to make sure that they get this right, because when lenders plug all this stuff in, it is more complex. And so you have to choose someone that they know what they're doing. It's just very, very important. Again, even if it's not me, I'm not trying to sell myself on this part. It's just 100% true. Like in any scenario, it's already delicate enough where you need a lender that knows what they're doing, but it's even more important with these grant programs because they have to get every penny right when they run it through and ensure that it's going to be an approved file. So hopefully you found this helpful. I would be happy to help anyone get pre-approved for this program. And if you'd like to look into your options, I suggest you do it quickly. And my contact info is in the description below, so don't hesitate to reach out for more information.